More, we can speak now to Henri Barkey, who's a professor of international relations at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Professor. Raisi was, of course, a protege of the Ayatollah. Some saying he might one day have replaced him. Just tell us a bit more about what kind of a leader he was.
Well, he was a hardliner, and yes, he was the protege of the leader, and was probably going to become the new leader, because Khamenei, who's the supreme leader, is 85 years old. And so this was part of the transition process. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens now, because I don't think neither the leader nor the leadership in general in Iran was ready for such an event, because it puts everything up, creates a great deal of uncertainty.
Yeah, so basically he leaves a pretty significant void in the Iranian political system, as does the departure of the foreign minister as well. Iran's under a lot of pressure, both domestically and internationally, isn't it? And I'm just wondering whether you think this latest series of circumstances leaves the leadership a bit more vulnerable.
I don't necessarily think that in the immediate future it will be more vulnerable. In a way, the death of Raisi creates a space here where people will be waiting to see what happens next. Because, as you said in your introduction, there'll be elections on June 28th. So you will see people running for the presidency, and obviously whoever wins the presidency will have the upper hand in replacing the supreme leader. So I think there's this period of expectation, of uncertainty, but that will help the regime maybe a little bit consolidate. The problem for the regime is, I suspect, is divisions within the leadership, because there are hardliners and there are even harder hardliners, because all the ones who were softer, who were reformists, like the previous president, they've all been sidelined. And what you do have now is really a struggle among the hardliners and the Revolutionary Guards, who are obviously the most important institution today in Iran after the supreme leader. And look, there is one possible scenario, and that is that the son of the supreme leader is maybe a candidate for the presidency. Right, and this creates a very bizarre situation, because it's almost like royalty, where the son of the leader might be in a position to replace the leader. So all of these things are going to create a conflict within Iran. But from the outside, as far as the outside world is concerned, what you will see is people waiting to see what will happen for the dust to settle, so to say.
Yeah, it sounds like they've got some big decisions to make during these next days and weeks. And one of the things we always talk about when we talk about Iran with all our guests is the disconnect between the leadership and this very young, progressive population that increasingly feels detached from them. But what you're describing is the hardliners and the harder hardliners makes it sound as though there's absolutely no willingness or no likelihood of any sort of an interface leader, no moderates waiting in the wings.
That's true. And look, one of the telltale signs of this unhappiness is that you've had very low turnouts in elections recently. And even Raisi was elected with a very small participation rate, which means that people are not really saying, the Iranian people don't really want to participate in the system. So yes, the regime is more in trouble, I would say, at home than it is abroad. Now, where the outside world is a factor, of course, is with the sanctions, because the sanctions do constrain the regime and makes it difficult for the regime to raise money from oil sales or other forms of exports. So there is pressure from people who are tired of this revolutionary regime. Remember, the regime came to power in 1979, and for large number of people who were born after 1979, all they have known is Ayatollah Khomeini and Ayatollah Khamenei as two leaders, right? Two old men who have run the country. And there's a way in which the Iranian people are far more educated and far more, should we say, integrated with the rest of the world than people realize. And that won't change. But there is no easy way to achieve change at the moment, because the regime does repress, as we saw last few years, rather violently.
Yeah, and I mean, just looking at the pictures of the leadership there as you've been talking, I mean, they're all fairly elderly. They're all men with white beards and white hair. I mean, there really is a mismatch, isn't there, between the people running the country and the people being governed. I mean, do you think there's an opportunity perhaps now for the country to identify someone new as a leadership? Is there any appetite for something new and fresh, and perhaps someone that might be a little bit more likely to form some sort of a rapprochement with the West?
I think that's very unlikely. I mean, what you see is, as I said, President Rouhani, who was the predecessor to Raisi, has been sidelined. All the shall we say, the reformers have been sidelined. They don't participate in any of the institutions of like the Assembly of Experts, who will ultimately make the decision as to who replaces Ayatollah Khamenei when he passes from the scene. So they are nowhere to be seen. Right. And look, the other thing to remember about this is not only do you have an old leadership, but you have a male leadership. I mean, this is the 21st century. I mean, there's half of the population of Iran has really no representation and no say. The women have no say in what's happening. So I think change will come in Iran. It will come from inside ultimately. But it will be difficult, and it will take some time. We should not expect that this change with Raisi's death will necessarily bring about change. Now, it is possible that the regime may make a mistake by choosing somebody, a real hardliner, or maybe as I said, the son of the supreme leader, and that may trigger a backlash. And I say may because we don't really know these things. I mean, it's very difficult to tell.
Okay, well, we'll obviously be keeping a very close eye on what happens between now and the 28th of June when those elections are held in Iran. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. Professor Henri Barkey at Lehigh University in the US. Thank you.